following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week. A lot of road action. A lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Welcome into another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, live here from Allen E. Paulson Stadium. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed. We also have a very special guest here with us in the booth, Jared Benko, Director of Athletics. Appreciate you joining us.
I appreciate it. I don't know what qualifies special, but I appreciate it.
It's been a busy day for you. You've had the all-staff meeting, kind of the kickback, getting everybody back in the swing of things to start the athletic year. Why was it so important to you, one, to get everybody back in person? A lot of the athletic department meetings had been in Zoom previous to that, but why was it so important for you to get everybody back in the same room, get everybody back and rolling?
Yeah, I think like anybody that's gone through, obviously transition from toggling in person to offline or online, I should say, with Zoom is just not the same. Just in terms of being with people and being in a room. And so today we had a chance, I believe it was our May meeting, we were at JI as a staff meeting and did that as the first one in person since I was hired. And so today was a chance, obviously, to get back in front of everybody and really kind of set the expectations and the tone and the excitement for the year ahead. As I mentioned, y'all were both in there, and we talked about just the successes of last season. But, again, quite frankly, the bar is much higher than we did last year, both academically and athletically, and that kind of leads into why we set the strategic plan. I hit on that this morning, and we're going to be aspirational here. I mentioned with all the coaches and staff in there that I can just speak for myself. I personally didn't come to Georgia Southern to just be good in football. We want to be good in all 17 sports and have comprehensive excellence on and off the field, and we're not going to stop until we achieve that.
You mentioned that it took roughly 6 months with a steering committee, getting input and feedback from a lot of different parts of this university to be able to put forth this strategic plan. But you also emphasized this morning in the all-staff meeting that you had to make sure that athletically you were aligning with the university. So how did you consider everything to be able to make sure that the athletic department was seeing things the same way as Georgia Southern University was?
No, that's a great question, Danny. It's funny. It's the first time I've actually undergone or really gone through a whole process, cradle to grave, on a strategic plan. And, it's kind of slow out of the gates because you had to make sure you had the right constituents and the right stakeholders at the seat of the table, make sure you're covering all the areas you needed to cover. And so it was a lot of kind of moving chairs on a deck, per se, to make sure you get the right buckets and the right people there at the seat of the table. And then from there is ideation of where do we want to go. And then really, if you want to get down to the quantitative way of measuring, is going to be the initiative. So we have 29 objectives. Yeah. Those 29 objectives really are kind of our blueprint and our North Star for success. But in essence, like any plan, if you don't execute it, it doesn't really amount to a hill of beans. So you've got to execute on it. And so that's where the initiatives come into play. And then what we did is, and we didn't talk about it today, but our senior leadership, we actually had, key stakeholders and those that are responsible for each initiative. And we're going to track on that. And each year we'll do a summer update of how we did. As I'm sure, we'll have some successes and we'll have some areas that we got to get better at. And that's the way, from a peer accountability standpoint, it's important. And then as you talk about the university, we already have, Dr. Marrero is a visionary leader. We already have KPIs and quarterly tasks, and we're tracking on that. There's a lot of overlap. But what you'll see, a common theme to the university and with us, is we're going to have alignment. Yeah. And that alignment from top to bottom is hopefully exemplified in my relationship with Dr. Marrero and throughout the department.
One of the things I wanted to touch on before we get into the nuts and bolts of what this strategic plan looks like over the next 5 years, but there were a lot of people that went into putting this together. You talked about the amount of time it took to do so, but you had the main steering committee, but then you also had 5 subcommittees that were kind of tasked with the overarching 5 different themes, with student-athlete success, competitive excellence, resource optimization, brand engagement and fan experience, and then do right, diversity and integrity. Mm-hmm. Talk about putting people in positions to be on those committees, to use their talents and what they were good at to the best part of making this?
Yeah, it's funny, and I've looked at this document so much, and yet I have yet to memorize it. So I've got a lot more reading to do. But I'll tell you, it was interesting. So we started with, just a couple buckets of people. We had, leaders in our department. We had leaders on campus, on the president's cabinet. We had current student athletes. We had former student athletes. We had our steering committee was primarily comprised of our executive board for the athletic foundation, also at FAR, Dr. Geierman, and had Dr. Tawana Wilson. And so we had a good cross-section. And then we took athletic staff. And, Colin, is interested in some ways we put people in areas or buckets where, for example, Brian Johnson does a great job with communications. Well, Brian's going to be, I believe he was in looking at it. Yeah, the brand engagement fan experience. That font's too small. I can't really. But Brian, that's his natural inclination. But we also found some areas where people kind of outside their area of expertise, but we thought they could add value. And part of that is, really this goal is to align Georgia Southern athletics and the university for the next 5 years, right? But that's not the only objective. We really wanted to make sure, beyond addressing student-athlete needs and whatnot, we wanted to help our staff continue to grow professionally and personally. And so there were some opportunities where we could sit there and say, hey, this person, while they could provide valuable feedback and advice in this bucket, we're going to put them in this bucket to stretch them a little bit, make them uncomfortable. And we talked about that this morning. We talked about being uncomfortable is where you find greatness. And I want our staff in a good way to be uncomfortable this year, to get outside of their comfort zone and to embrace the unexpected. And I'll give you a case in point. We talked about this morning, too, about with our external group last week, is each person, right, should find one time, especially a home game at Paulson, Hanner, J.I., to make a wow moment with our fans and patrons. One wow moment. And you think about the compounding way that happens over the course of a season. So each of us plays a vital role within the department, and then conversely with the strategic plan is a way to bring everybody together.
Objectives, initiatives. This is 32 pages long in Eagle Nation. You can go on gseagles.com to read this in its entirety. If you have any questions for Jared, feel free to submit those on Facebook Live. But in reading through this, one thing that sticks out, you have given the people that are working for you, but also giving the fans an idea of goals that can be reached. They may seem like they're going to take a while to get to them, but these are attainable goals. You're not just going to put numbers out there just to say, hey, this is what we're going to try to do, but these are attainable goals if we all can push in the same direction.
Yeah, I don't like to waste people's time or waste my time, and so we wouldn't have put this plan together if we didn't think it was achievable. Now, some things are going to be it's like any plan. You have some not low-hanging fruit, but you have some things that I hope to achieve here in this next year. Some are probably 2-3 years out, and some are 4 or 5 years out. And like any plan, if you look at a 1 to 5 scale, you're probably going to end up in that 3 scale where some get done, some don't.
Yeah.
But it gives you something to shoot for. If we hit everything out of the gates, and we've made it too easy, I think this is a good balance of some stuff that, quite honestly, is aspirational in a good way. Some things, if we continue the path we're on, we're going to hit. And some we ought to hit right out of the gates next year. And so part of that is trying to get some early wins. And then part of that is, again, we talked about is pushing people outside of their comfort zones and really, and y'all know how much I despise complacency. We are not going to be a complacent organization. And so part of that is be innovative, forward-thinking. All of us need to have a growth mindset. And so that's what we're trying to talk about as a department. And so as we tackle these tasks, yes, sometimes they're going to be totally out of the blue. And some things you're like, you know what, that's something we probably should aim for. We just haven't really put it on paper and benchmarked it. And so I'm excited because it's a chance for everybody in the department. Y'all know, y'all touched on this morning, everyone plays a vital role. And so if this person here, this person there doesn't do their job to the level we expected, well, then it's going to impact our student-athlete experience. It's going to impact our donor and fan experience, and that's our priorities.
The good thing is that Reggie Simpkins already guaranteed the 3.2 GPA is going to be met this year, so that's one thing off the plate already.
Yeah, we brought that up, and he's like, is that 3.1? I said, no, that's 3.2. But you know what? I mean, I think that, we go back to the mission and vision. Our vision is to be the preeminent Group of 5 school, which makes you one of the best in the country. And based on our results, we're not there yet. And so we're going to work like crazy, and we're going to work smart, but band everybody together. So a lot of things, the undercurrent, Danny Dahl, kind of to your point, the undercurrent to everything in this plan is culture.
Yeah.
We're trying to get the culture in a good spot, and that's going to take a lot of work. And really, as y'all have heard me say before, culture is an amoeba. Yeah. It's constantly moving and constantly cajoling, and so we have to sit there and say, all right, yes, we have some new people here, but how do they bring value? And our hope is that every person we add to the department increases their production, and then conversely, those that are here, we're playing a small role in helping them reach their full potential. And that's our goal is, and y'all have heard me say this, is everyone in the department, our goal is to help you, Danny, and Colin, and everyone be the best version of themselves. And that looks differently. Everyone has different goals and different aspirations. That's okay. That's what makes us a great department. But we're going to help each person reach that full potential. And then the derivative of that is we're going to be the best we have ever been as a department.
You dive through the 5 different priorities that the strategic plan touches on. The first one is student-athlete success, and I think a lot of times people kind of tunnel that into academics. But the thing that I like about this section is it covers everything from, yes, it touches on the academic, the APR, the graduation rate, but you also go into the APEX program and the mental health aspect of it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to say, hey, we're going to shoot for this GPA and graduate student-athletes. And that's a core process and an achievable goal for us. But as I share with our coaches today, I mean, we are tasked with an awesome responsibility of playing a really important role in the lives of our young men and women. And as I share with our coaches, I don't expect our student athletes to always like our coaches. It's not about a likability contest. It's about mutual respect. And and I also share with our student athletes getting ready to talk to them is I don't expect our coaches to be their friend. Our coaches are extensions of their parents.
Sure.
And ultimately, student-athlete success to me, Colin, to your point, and that's why we have more than just APR and GPA, is how are we developing these young men and women to springboard out of Statesboro, right, and out of Georgia Southern. And not only springboard, but become an industry titan, become someone that's become a great mom, dad, husband, wife, whatever. And so a lot of this is, yes, we're going to focus on the things on campus, but everything's done with a trajectory of 5 or 10 years out. And really the hope is, when you say student-athlete experience, is are we preparing our young men and women for 5, 10 years out? And what you'll see is, for all of us, we've had different people in our lives that have been influential, whether it be parents, a coach, whatever. Well, sometimes those conversations, as my grandma used to say, we have those come to Jesus talks, and sometimes those are just conversations that aren't fun, but we're also dealing with 18 to 22-year-old young men and women, and we have to have grace and understand that they're going to make mistakes, but also, too, is really important to help them grow and learn from it. And one of the last things I'll share is one of the best things my parents did was allow me to make mistakes. And as I said this morning, it's not foolish mistakes like crossing a four-lane interstate like on Fair Road at lunchtime, right? That's like playing Frogger, right? But it's more about saying, hey, listen, we're going to give you we're going to empower you to make a decision. And then when mistakes happen, why did it happen? What would you do differently? And then how do we correct that for the future? So.
The second one being competitive excellence. And the first part of this is something that I haven't necessarily heard of being quantified this way. And the first point is qualify 50% of the 17 sports programs for NCAA or bowl postseason play. And I think it goes to the point that you've talked about ever since you got here of impacting all 17 sports that Georgia Southern has, but also holding them to kind of the same standard.
Yeah, well, just again, y'all know me, I'm very candid and honest. I mean, there were several sports within our department that just were whether it be neglected or just weren't made a priority. And particularly on our women's sides, the women's sports programs here at Georgia Southern have a ton of potential. And I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that our best days are ahead. And that's for all sports, particularly our women's sports. And so as you think about laying this out, our Learfield Cup standings, which is easiest way to describe it is kind of an index of all sports across the spectrum in college athletics. I think it counts 19 sports. We only have 17. Yeah. But still, we had our highest finish here this past year. And you think about on the heels of obviously a bowl win, but also men's golf and women's tennis making the postseason. And so it was the highest finish since the 12-13 season. Now, that's a pretty good index. It's not perfect. But for us, when you start looking at, well, how do we become a top 50, top 75 program? And that's more of a maturation of this plan going forward. Well, we've got to start getting people in postseason play because that's where the cumulative impact is felt. And for us to be a top 75, top 100, top 50 program, as we continue to evolve and get better, it starts with getting teams in the postseason. And what does that mean? Well, yeah, it's AQs and winning the conference, but our hope is you look at a sport like softball. they had 4. Obviously, had an AQ with the championship team this year,
Right.
but you had 3 that made it just from a RPI standpoint, and that's where as a conference, as we continue to get better, the percentage is getting more teams should increase, but it starts here and it starts with us winning.
If there was something Georgia Southern could really hang its hat on from a year ago, it's how the athletic department as a whole dealt with COVID. And we were hoping that this was going to be a post-COVID season, but with the Delta variant throwing a wrench into things and the possibility that things may not change as much as we hope, you emphasized this morning that there could be even more challenges this year as opposed to last year whenever we expected things to get turned on their ear and how we were going to deal with all that. So how does Georgia Southern attack what could be in 21?
Yeah, well, I'll start first, and that's a great question. I think, the reason why we talk about being different set of challenges is because you've got those that are vaccinated and those that are not, and obviously we're strongly encouraging people to do their research and education and encourage people to get vaccinated. But from our vantage point, it's different in a good way. This time last year, there still was a sense of, are we going to have that first game? We're opening up school obviously for the fall matriculation. Same thing is there's no limitations from a seating standpoint at this point at Paulson Stadium for football. So, those are different, right? Because this time last year we're thinking, all right, well, 25% is kind of where we're at. What are the changes there? Now on the flip side, obviously, we still obviously from a student athlete standpoint, we're having surveillance testing, which is your weekly testing, right?
Yeah.
As the Sun Belt requires. But those that are not those that are vaccinated and are not exhibiting any symptoms, they don't take part in that protocol. Of course, the flip side is this variant, and I know enough to be dangerous, but this Delta variant spreads probably at a 4 or 5 time multiple. Yeah. So what we have to continue to do is be regimented in terms of our contact tracing and how that implements. So, it's more of probably a broad range of scenarios this year than last year. The good news is the severity from a standpoint of mass impact as far as people coming to the stadium and whatnot is not where it was last year. So really, again, we go back to we're educators and we have to continue to educate our student athletes. We're not indoctrinating them, but we're educating them on what science is saying and what ultimately our doctors are saying, and those are the Sun Belt and here locally as well. And so we're going to continue to do that. And again, as we see our vaccination rates across our team spike up, we'll continue to hopefully that's just education that we continue to expand upon.
Now, we did get a question on social media. We can give you some context that from the standpoint of Colin and I, in the partnership that Georgia Southern Athletics has with Learfield, we're handling the media rights, but there's also the corporate partnerships. And with new general manager Terry Harvin, he has been so great at getting new businesses involved. And part of the plan was the idea of naming rights on Georgia Southern's facilities. Yep. We know with the Convocation Center, with the IPF, even Paulson Stadium could be subject to that. But would that idea be specific to just the facilities, or would there be opportunities for sections in those facilities to also get naming rights from a corporate standpoint?
Yeah, you always have naming opportunities, and for example, we have let's just take the Convocation Center, right? So it's named for the late Jack and Ruth Ann Hill, and so it's the Jack and Ruth Ann Hill Convocation Center. The arena component of that, right, which is a component of the Convocation Center, can be named. Yeah. Well, within there, we obviously have opportunities for premium areas to be named, different sections. So we're doing that, and part of that's with a philanthropic giving piece, right? And then on the flip side, you have the corporate sponsorship piece, and that's where you take the indoor practice facility. There's going to be opportunities for a naming rights, and that naming right, it could be a private, family. It could be a philanthropic gift, or it could be a corporate partnership. And so I know we talked to you all about the Danny and Colin. Was it what opportunity was it? Was it the restroom, or what were those opportunities we were going to talk to you all about? But there's some opportunities for everybody involved.
Might make the most sense with us, but
yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, to answer your question, there's opportunities for both corporate giving and also for sponsorships, I should say, and private giving awesome. As well. So that's a unique thing. That's what's so great about Eagle Nation is you mentioned Terry. Terry's come in, and we all help, and his leadership. We've added a ton of new corporate partners this year. And you look at last year, when you think about all the record fundraising levels we hit, and the one that I'm really proud of has nothing to do with the dollars raised. It's 75% of our major gifts last year, 33 or 44 from people never given a major gift to the university.
That's awesome.
So again, I look at it as a groundswell, but we have a long runway to go, which is a good thing.
And that kind of falls under the third priority category in resource optimization. But then you move on to the fourth one in brand engagement and fan experience. And I know this is one that's really near and dear to your heart. And you talk about everybody presenting one wow moment per event, per game, whatever it is. What do those wow moments look like? And in your mind, what does that look like from a kind of collective group?
Yeah, I mean, an example I think about is if somebody's walking in the stadium, it's their first time, and you kind of get that wide-eyed freshman look where you're like, where am I going? Well, do you point the person in the right direction, or do you walk them there, right? That's just a small example. One of the things we're talking about this year are unique experiences. One of the things we've talked about is can we find a way to identify people's first time in Paulson, and on the back end send them a certificate to recognize it. We're trying to find customizable experiences, and I can't share with all because some of those I want to be surprises, but I just think that, for us, I want this to be a family environment,
sure.
But also I want to have an opportunity to embrace our history and find out what are opportunities to further promote, kids on the hill, right? There's just a lot of opportunities, and I almost gave away one of the ideas, but there's just some things for us that who is our who? So we think about our who, like who are we for? We're for our student athletes, right, and our staff and coaches, but we're who our fans and donors, and we've said before is that's why we're out in the parking lots and the ticket gates and throughout the stadium is I want our fans from the time they pull in the parking lot to the time they leave to feel like, one, we have a high care level, right? We care so much for them. Two, we try to give them the best experience possible, right? And so when they spend their hard-earned money, they feel like they're getting a good return on their investment. And three, the one thing that there's no school in the country that can top is the passion for Georgia Southern.
Absolutely.
And we are stronger together as Eagle Nation, as members, than separated. And so you think about when we have these 6 games this year, and by the way, as y'all know, we have the best home schedule in the history, arguably, of our football program.
Yes, I would agree with
so, yes, the spotlight's going to be on us, but that's a good thing, right? Because I want people to come to games, and some of the stuff we did last year, only a reduced crowd saw, and my hope is to say, hey, we had a great experience, and we're not above reproach. I mean, we're going to make mistakes, and I hope that our fans can offer us feedback in a constructive way of how we get better.
Yeah, the only full crowd you've seen was the Georgia Southern baseball game
yep.
a year and a half ago. So you haven't seen a full Paulson Stadium yet. So I would
which is exciting. And again,
get ready for that one.
I was, last year I was able to get around pretty much almost all the tailgating, and this year I think, I was thinking mathematically, just being a math guy, finance guy, of how from the time before the game, I don't think it's possible to hit every tailgate anymore, just because the lots can be full.
You're gonna have too much food to eat.
Yeah, well, it's a combination of one, eating too much, and two, spilling something on a shirt. And
never wear white for home game.
No, I always have a backup shirt, And I also learned it's funny because I've had several of my mentors and people I've grown up with. They would wear a jacket, like a suit jacket or something, and I'm just like, listen, that's overdressing. I already am a sweater anyway, so I'll just keep it in a polo and keep it casual. And I'll wear some hats sometimes too, because otherwise, I mean. When you have a receding hairline, you're already kind of just losing that. It kind of look like, Willy Wonka a little bit. So.
The last part of the strategic plan is the do right, the diversity and integrity. And the 5 points of this, I think, really hit home, especially what has kind of happened the past year and being able to build on that of what has already been put in place here at Georgia Southern and building off of it for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, to me, we talked about, do right, which is Coach Russell. Obviously, he talked about Coach Russell mentioned do right, and that's we use that a lot, and probably overuse it in a good way. But, for us, when you go back we want to create an environment where, listen, I don't want a homogenous organization that everyone thinks like me, and it looks like me and acts like me, whatever. And so part of that is trying to embrace everyone where they come from, their backgrounds and whatnot. And then I also mentioned today, too, about the integrity piece where, I flat out told our coaches that, if they are faced with a decision of whether to cheat or not, they cheat, they won't work here. I will personally escort them out. And we're going to do things the right way. We're not going to cut corners. Now, is that more challenging for a school like us? Absolutely. Is it challenging for Georgia Southern with a one-time transfer exemption? Absolutely. Yeah. Is it challenging, or are there some inherent advantages for name, image, likeness, right, for other schools? Absolutely. But, I'll share with you, in my last institution, we had half the budget of Texas A&M, right, at Mississippi State. And if that's the case, then why, if it's all about money, why roll the ball out there? Well, again, there were times we beat the rear end, right? And so to me, it's not always about money. Are we going to grow our resources? 100%, right? That's our goal is to try to continue to resource our sports and student athletes as best we can. But I will share with you, there's common things that are non-negotiables for us as a program and for me just in my role, and we're not going to cheat. We're going to have high integrity. Listen, I sin every day and I make mistakes every day, and by His grace I'm saved. But I also will share with you too that we're trying to create bad habits, instances where we're not being successful from becoming a habit and a pattern. And that's part of what we talked about today was, listen, ask for permission on the front end, not for forgiveness. So, listen, today's world, the NCAA, everything's changing. We'll probably have a new manual, new rule book here soon. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the core of who we are comes back to are we doing right by people? And listen, we talked about we're going to be demanding, but not demeaning, right? And the three things we talked about all last year, you talked about dealing with adversity, was, really controlling your attitude, right? Controlling your effort and treating people well, treating people as you would yourself. And those are biblical principles, but they're also principles of just being a good person. And so everyone loves to talk about being blue collar, but are your behaviors reflecting that? Yeah. Because, oh, hey, I'm blue collar, man, that's awesome. Well, what are you looking at your schedule and are you being blue collar? Because if you're not, then you're being hypocritical of being blue collar, right? And so I think it was a good refresher again this morning just to talk about what's our identity, right? As Coach Russell said, our colors are blue and white. We talked about branding, right? And so for us, we're stronger together as a team, and I don't expect everyone to always like each other, to hang out after outside hours, but I expect when they come into the office and we're at, on campus, for everyone to pull on the same side of the road with purpose and intent. And that's a non-negotiable. And for us to reach our full potential, we have to be more intentful, more impactful, and be together as a close-knit group. Because here's the thing we don't have. I've been in a place before with tons of layers of bureaucracy. We don't have that here. So we can be very nimble and be very flexible in our approach. But it takes people bending together saying, listen, it's not about me, it's not about you or you. Collectively, how can we impact Georgia Southern? And the last thing I'll share, too, well, the two questions, y'all heard this morning, the two questions we have to ask ourselves every day is how do we positively impact, how do we make Georgia Southern better? How do we positively impact the university, right? It's the first question. And the second question was how do we positively impact our student athletes? Those are two things every day when we walk out in the parking lot we should ask ourselves. And we're going to have days where we do a great job of that, and some days we don't. The good thing is we stack those good days on top of each other, and then collectively you see the difference.
Finally, before we let you go, got a question on Facebook Live coming from our buddy Glenn. Said, if you had to describe the brand in a sentence or two, what would it be?
It's a great question. I would say our brand is one of history and tradition. It's one that I automatically, just from even growing up, think of Coach Russell and his impact, blue collar. I think we talk about doing with more with less. We're going to start doing more with more. But to me, when I think about our brand, it's really the values that I was raised. I know this is more than one or two sentences, but it's the values that my parents raised me on, and that was the humility piece, the hard work piece, the treating people well piece, and nothing's expected. Like you should expect nothing. Like nothing's given to you. You got to come and earn it. And that's where I think what Georgia Southern values and Georgia Southern brand resonates with me because that's what I was raised in a household that way. And so, Glenn, going back to your question, it's one of history and tradition and Coach Russell, but it's a winning history. It's a winning tradition. And I also see us as a university where we're 27,000 students for the first time ever, obviously this year. And so we're on the rise. We're a brand on the rise. And so when I walk through the airport, if I'm at Savannah or Hartsville Jackson, wherever I'm traveling, I always wear Georgia Southern stuff because I want people to give a shout out saying, Hail Southern or whatnot.
If somebody yells Georgia, do you say Southern back? Or?
Well, make sure they're not like barking at me. That's usually what happens. I usually don't say Georgia. Usually they bark at me. But I usually respond, well, can you please play us in football? But that's a whole other discussion. So. We'll leave that for another show.
Really appreciate your time. I know you're busy today. Got to let you go. But you've talked about ever since you've been here about the brighter days are ahead. And the brightest days and the best days are ahead. and this kind of outlines it. Appreciate you stopping by and kind of diving into it with us.
No, sure thing. Listen, guys, I mean, this is right in my wheelhouse. I love to talk about the upcoming season, but really, again, this focus on getting today's meeting and getting our department strategic plan yesterday being launched is really giving the blueprint and the vision for the next 5 years. And listen, Eagle Nation, I know you probably had a chance to read through it all, but it does lay out a bold, aggressive plan, and we all have the same goal of making Georgia Southern be the best it can be. And so I'll just encourage you to find ways that you can continue to help us, and that's time and effort. If you feel compelled to give, that's great. Buy season tickets, you name it. But our best days are ahead, and Eagle Nation's a huge part of that.
Appreciate it, Jared.
Thanks a lot, Jared.
Thank y'all.
We're going to dive into the news and notes in Georgia Southern athletics as, again, got to let Jared go. He's got a lot more important things than to sit around and talk to us for hours on end. But being able to talk about what's coming up in Georgia Southern athletics this past week, and being able to see you had a lot of home games that were announced. The times for Georgia Southern football games were announced earlier on this week, and I know that makes people pretty excited, Danny Reed.
Knowing that you've got a chance to host a BYU, a Coastal, a Georgia State, an Arkansas State, a Louisiana, and knowing that all of those times are specifically set, I think you don't just have knowing when those 6 games are date-wise, but to be able to say, okay, I know I got a game I got to be at 6. I know I got to be a game at 4. And 4 o'clock isn't a game time that we've seen a bunch here. When we go back to the 1980s, Terry talks about playing in 140 degrees to 12 noon when it was grass and Paulson. But as soon as you see the Nats, anybody that came here knew that they were finished. We know that we have largely transitioned to more of a 6 p.m. early in the season and somewhere between 1 and 3 once we get later on in the year because it gets too dark. But the 4 o'clock games are interesting because that gets you a chance to be at a different time slot, and who knows the advanced flexibility of possibly having those games picked up by national television this year because, as we know, the Sun Belt did such an amazing job of taking a step forward in that respect last year. Now, granted, there were times where 2/3 of the country wasn't playing because of COVID, but as we've also said, the Sun Belt can't apologize for taking advantage of opportunities. Look what a Coastal did. Look what a Louisiana did. Look what App continued to do. And, of course, Georgia Southern found its way on a national TV a few times anyway. We've got the Thursday game against South Alabama in Mobile at New Hancock-Whitney Stadium for 21. But as of now, you're primarily going to be on E+. But that doesn't mean that if the success for the Sun Belt continues, that Georgia Southern isn't going to find its way on a national television if those games get picked up with those 6 and 12-day TV windows, if we don't get a chance to see some more of those this year.
So as of right now, the 6 home games for Georgia Southern football, all of the start times have been announced. We talked about with Jared, one of the best, if not the best, home schedule that Georgia Southern football has had. Gardner-Webb will be a 6 o'clock kickoff on September the 4th. September the 25th against Louisiana will be a 6 o'clock as well. October the 2nd, Arkansas State, that'll be a 4 p.m. kick. Georgia State on October 30th will be a 6 p.m. kick. Coastal Carolina, November the 6th, will be a 6 o'clock kickoff as well, along with a 4 o'clock kickoff for BYU on November the 20th. And it's a good mix. I know they put it out on social media of what people would want to see.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, that those 2 4 o'clock kicks, it's a good mix of like people from Atlanta. Savannah can make it a day trip where you leave earlier in the morning, get here, game, get on back before you get to Sunday.
You're not waiting all day, but you're not having to be in a position where, we've got to get revved up for a noon or a 1 o'clock kick. Now, there are pros and cons to all of it. We know that. But the 4 is right in the middle of that, this is something different. This is something new. The home schedule is outstanding. There is a chance that there are 3 top 25 opponents that are coming here. Never been close to anything like that. Look, BYU lost a lot. We're going to talk about that plenty more once the end of November gets here. But how amazing they were last year until they ran into Coastal. I don't think there's any doubt that both Coastal and Louisiana are going to be ranked going into this season. Who knows, maybe App is ranked. Could you think of the Sun Belt having 3 ranked teams preseason? Nope, they haven't had a preseason ranked team, period. But to know that there are 3 in 1 year possibly, that's huge.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that, but you also know my my thoughts on preseason rankings.
Well, that's the polls that we talked about with Georgia Southern predicted 4th and the preseason all-conference teams. It's nice from our standpoint because it gives us a talking point. But when it comes down to it, you still have to play the games this year, and those are largely going to change and likely going to change.
So all of those start times on gseagles.com. Just go to the schedule tab for Georgia Southern football, and you will find those right there. A couple of other news notes to get to this past week in Georgia Southern athletics. Tia Lewis was named an assistant coach for Georgia Southern women's basketball, added to Anita Howard's staff. Played at ODU, was a standout for ODU, but also played for Coach Howard in the AAU ranks. We don't dive too much in the AAU ranks.
No, I can't say we do.
But played for Coach Howard in the AAU side, and now will be joining the women's basketball staff as an assistant coach. Mason McWhorter for Georgia Southern baseball was named a COSIDA Academic All-American, a 3.67 GPA. Old Mason. Still amazed he hasn't been picked up by some major league team, and I think now that the deadline of signing your draft picks has passed, I think you're going to see a couple more free agent signings. I don't know if Mason will be one of them or not. I hope he is, but still amazed by that. He had a fantastic season on the field and obviously in the classroom as well.
Every award he has won this year has been deserved, but that what you just said, Academic All-American, that's the best award he could get because that exemplifies both parts of why you go to college.
And on the list, and in the release Aaron Soka put out on gseagles.com, you can see it as well, but of the list of Academic All-Americans, he's one of 31 first-time All-Americans, which I think is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But congratulations to Mason. The other news note coming out this past week in Georgia Southern athletics, the men's and women's basketball conference schedules were announced.
For now.
Again,
we had this last year too, and then it all got turned around. Hopefully it's something close to what we got.
Men's basketball will start out in Arkansas. Women's basketball will kind of start in Arkansas.
Yeah, it's not quite mirror, but it's not quite doubleheaders.
No. So it's kind of in between. But the way women's basketball is, you have 2 less conference games. And so, like the Georgia State week for you guys, for men's basketball, you will play Georgia State at home and on the road on a Thursday, Saturday.
Correct.
The same week.
Correct.
Whereas women's basketball will play Georgia State 2 Saturdays. It'll be January the 22nd up on the 3rd floor, and then February the 5th inside Hanner Fieldhouse. So it'll be a week where you only have 1 game for women's basketball. Because of that kind of throws a kink in the schedule. So women's basketball will start December the 30th against Arkansas State at home. And then women's basketball will go to the Jack Stevens Center on January the 1st. So apparently my New Year's Eve is going to be somewhere between here and Arkansas.
We will be completely in Arkansas.
Yeah, you'll be there. You'll be leaving the Jack Stevens Center because you guys start on December the 30th at Little Rock and then make your way to Jonesboro. You can have ring in the new year with Matt Stoltz.
Oh, we've already talked about that. We got it all.
You and Bobo and all of them.
We have not been to the Convo in 4 years by the time that game will have gotten played. And
was the last time you were in the Convo when it was actually called the Convo?
Yeah, I think it was that might have been the first year of First National Bank.
I knew that was right around the start of it.
It's still the Convo, but
yeah,
that was
always be the Convocation Center in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
That was the 61 foul game. So maybe it's good that we haven't been back there
since.
Was
that the game with the free throw that didn't come anywhere close?
It was either that was the year before. I think that was the year before.
It was one of those. They all kind of start to run together.
Because we went out there each of my first 3 years here, and we haven't been back since. So it will be 4 years from the last time that Georgia Southern played a conference game there. I feel like we're in the SEC where, in football, there's a chance there you don't go to somewhere for 14 years.
Yeah.
And Texas A&M isn't going to play a game at Georgia or something like that where, granted, they're going to be on the verge of 16 teams here very soon, probably before 25. But that's just weird with the Sun Belt and the way the scheduling works to not go to someone in basketball for 4 years.
So men's basketball starts the Arkansas stretch of the Sun Belt Conference play. Then they come home to welcome in the Texas schools. You get to see our buddies Clint, maybe Brant even makes the trip down.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
And then Josh makes his return to Statesboro on Saturday, January the 8th when UTA comes to town. Then you will head to the Alabamas January 13th and 15th for Troy and South Alabama. The Carolinas come in January 20th and 22nd. Appalachian State that Saturday the 22nd. head to Louisiana January 27th at ULM. And then the 29th, head to the Cajun Dome. See our buddy Jay Walker. And a couple others, I would imagine.
What immediately sticks out is the fact that we're going to get to play the West Division this year.
That's true. You hadn't seen him in 2 years.
Outside of the tournament game, you saw Texas State, saw Arkansas State, didn't get them in the regular season, keeping everything intra-division. And that's another part because the divisions are gone. So you're just 12 basketball teams, but you can say you're going out west to play Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. I know it's not way out west, but for the Sun Belt, it is. And then, of course, you've got the 2 games against Georgia State, and you'll match up against the Alabamas and the Carolinas home and home every year.
So you got Georgia State on Thursday the 17th up in Atlanta on the 3rd floor. Then you get the Saturday game inside Hanner Fieldhouse February the 19th. My guess is that place is going to be rocking that day.
Didn't get that game last year because of COVID, so it will have been 2 years since the Panthers last made a visit to Hanner Fieldhouse. Went up there last year, lost a tight game, and was back and forth the entire way. Even if Georgia State would have been able to come down last year, it was going to be about 25% capacity. It would have felt nuts, but now with hopefully no restrictions at that point, we're planning on it, but hopefully by that point there won't be any restrictions, and that place will be filled to the rafters with Eagle fans.
You finish the final 3 regular season games all at home. Georgia State again the 19th, and then you get the Louisiana schools. Louisiana comes in the 24th of February, and then the 26th for the ULM Warhawks. And those 3, along with Georgia Southern, are always kind of fighting for one of the top spots, and especially with the different way that the conference is aligned like you talked about.
You'll be fighting for a seed regardless, but considering how good the Cajuns are expected to be, and ULM's a little bit up in the air because they're either big and slow or they're fast and they score a lot of points. I'm not sure what version Keith Richard is going to have this year. Did not see them a year ago, as we already talked about. You didn't see anybody out west. And also the fact that everybody goes to the tournament again this year and all games are played at the Base Center. There's none of this, we're going to play at the grade school gym. No, everybody is going to be playing at the Base Center, which we didn't get a chance to see last year, either of us, because we were one and done at Pensacola State College.
On the women's side, we mentioned start against Arkansas State inside Hanner Fieldhouse, then make the trip to Little Rock. We'll go to the Carolinas the 2nd week of January. Welcome in the Texas schools on the 13th and the 15th. We'll be at Georgia State January the 22nd, then home for 5 straight, as Troy and South Alabama on January 27th and 29th, respectively. February the 5th will be the Saturday game against Georgia State at home. That will actually be a doubleheader with men's basketball. You guys have Troy that afternoon, or however that gets arranged. Then Thursday, the February the 10th.
Good luck.
Appalachian State at home inside Hanner. Coastal Carolina comes to Statesboro February the 12th. And then it is 4 straight on the road to end the regular season for women's basketball, to the Alabamas and to the Louisianas as well.
How'd you get so lucky? And with 4 on the road like that?
I don't know. Who knows? Whoever knows what happens.
Just put that on Chad.
Probably.
Lunsford, not Jackson.
Yeah. Well,
just find a way to bring it back to
one of
us. That's something we haven't even brought up yet.
Chad Jackson?
Well, yeah. But students are trickling back. We got Rush Week. Operation Move-In is this weekend. Tomorrow is the first preseason football press conference going to take place over at Bishop tomorrow afternoon. Chad Lunsford will address all the local media. And fall camp starts on Friday morning.
That's pretty incredible.
This has been a long summer. I think this is the longest summer, at least since I've gotten here. I don't know how you view it, but it seems like in ways it's taken forever to get to the start of this football season. I don't know if that's because of COVID or some other mitigating factors. I don't know, but Friday morning it begins for this team.
We'll get the full schedule come tomorrow whenever we've got the preseason press conference, preseason media day. We'll get the full practice schedule. It'll be published on gseagles.com as well. But it's an exciting time because, and we talk about it a lot at media day. At media day, everybody's 0-0, and everybody's going to win a conference championship.
Everybody's happy.
Right. Everybody's happy. It's a fun time. But this is the part where you start to get the pads back on Friday. You'll get everything rocking and rolling over at Eagle Creek, but it's going to be good to get back to some kind of normalcy for what football season, and We don't know what the COVID protocols yet look like for football season during games and whatnot, but we do know, and one thing that I know I missed last year, and I'm sure you did as well, because, yeah, we're wired the same, is...
He's right. He just is.
Is being part of the biggest thing of spring practice is being on the field, being around these guys, and we were to an extent, but you couldn't like you normally would be. And being able to get to know these guys, there was a lot of times where we knew about the guys, but some of the new guys you didn't know.
Yeah.
And it makes our jobs a little bit more difficult because it's easier to talk about somebody that you know and get to tell the story of somebody you know.
Like Todd Bradley, Glenn, and J.D. King, who we had at Media Day.
Correct.
But there's no more Shy Words. There's no more Kendrick Duncan, no more Rashad Byrd, no more Raymond Johnson. Everybody in the league didn't lose much, but everybody lost someone major.
Yeah.
And I feel like we talked about that with the men's basketball side maybe 2 years ago. There wasn't a whole lot that people lost that year, but everybody lost somebody major. Every football team has a boatload of starters coming back.
Yeah.
That's because of the COVID waiver year from 2020. But everybody in the league lost someone vital. And for Georgia Southern,
and there's a lot of transfers coming into the Sun Belt that you may not have seen without that one-year transfer rule.
And in the case of Georgia Southern, that is going to take place right away on defense because 2 new inside linebackers are expected. We know Todd Bradley, Glenn, Trey Allen, John Ferguson at the top of that list, but you're going to get to know Kadri Jackson from North Carolina, Kevon Glenn from Florida State, and the local boy from Tift County, Andrew Johnson, coming back this way from Oregon. They're going to be heavily in the mix in the middle of that defense, and we know that James Graham on offense was ticketed to be in the quarterback discussion. For now, he's going to play wide receiver, but like we addressed with Coach Lunsford in New Orleans, doesn't mean he can't play quarterback at some point this year, should he be needed. But at this point, it's best to get him in a position where he can be on the field right away. And who knows, maybe you can work him into a Wild Eagle, or maybe it becomes his offense later in the year. We just don't know that yet.
And it's, to me, and I know it's different because he transferred in from Georgia Tech and yada yada, but I'd look at him a lot like we saw with Wesley Kennedy when he first got to Statesboro. Yes, he came in as a quarterback. He had quarterback experience, but you had to get him the ball. He was too athletic and too skilled to not get him the ball. It seems to be something in that same mold.
With Kennedy, that first year in 2017, had trouble figuring out how to get him on the field to a degree. With Caleb Hood, his first year, knew he had the potential. How do you put him in position to make an impact? Look what he did at the end of last year from a return standpoint. Had the punt return touchdown against FAU, ran a long one back here against UMass, had the long kickoff return against Louisiana Tech. Now you've got a new toy in Amari Jones coming in from Tulane. Somebody that can play slot, somebody that can play running back, somebody that is going to be involved somehow with the offense and in the return game, but it's just up to these coaches how exactly you work him in and get the ball into those hands.
We have a...
Oh, boy. I just know. See, wired the same way.
I don't know, but when I look on our Facebook live stream... and we've got like 7 new comments in the span of the 3 minutes that I wasn't looking at it, I get nervous.
Okay.
But it's okay. It's a good one.
Okay.
Got to send a big shout out, and it's not just because Andy asked for it, but got to send a huge shout out to the equipment staff that camp is a 4-letter word for them and not in the just spelling of it. Camp is not fun for the equipment people.
He was telling me about that on Saturday a little bit.
Getting everybody equipped, getting everybody everything they need, and athletes are needy, most of them, and being able to navigate that between Andy, Dolph, so many guys that are be a part of that equipment staff, and they do a lot throughout the year, but I know camp is a quite stressful time for those fine folks.
We thought last year was going to be the issue when COVID popped up, but at that point, everything had already been ordered. Most of the stuff was in. Now you're in this first year of, can we get what we initially put in for late last year in some instances? So it's about manipulating the chess pieces to get everybody exactly what they need in some way, I guess. But, yeah, camp is definitely a 4-letter word.
But they do a fantastic job. We're going to talk to them throughout the season and kind of get their thoughts on what goes on in the FOC.
before we do our U pick for this week, we do need to send some condolences out to the family of Bert Williams, who passed away after a battle with cancer. We remember his son Parker played offensive line at Georgia Southern, longtime head coach at Georgia Military, national champion head coach in junior college. And we bring it up for those reasons, but also Coach Lunsford worked for him, Coach Sloan worked for him, Coach Cabral worked for him, and all accounts, an outstanding guy. I can't tell you how many times Frank Solkowski has talked about him and the number of times he's had to cover him, but someone you felt like was a member of the Georgia Southern family.
Yeah, and it's somebody that football in the state of Georgia, we talked about it a lot when we've had different people over the last couple of years, but had such an impact on the state of Georgia football.
Yeah.
And being able to have his hands, and everybody talks about the Nick Saban coaching tree. Bert Williams isn't too far off.
Yeah, the couple names we just mentioned, those are far-reaching branches that we could go into on another edition, but just to know that he had an impact on so many guys that we get a chance to see on a daily basis, pretty special.
This week's U pick kind of goes off of what we were talking about, the equipment staff, and it could be the answer to it.
It is a 4-letter word?
No.
No, okay.
No, that's for another podcast.
All right.
But what is one person affiliated with Georgia Southern football that you would not want to trade jobs with?
Not want to.
And I guess we could do the reciprocal. You would want to change jobs with. All right, here we go. For a day, and yes, we're manipulating this question on the fly.
Just one day, okay.
For one day, who is the person you would and who is the person you would not want to change jobs with?
Wow. The gears are going nuts. Do you know?
No. That's why I asked you first.
No. Okay.
Ooh. I just got mine.
Okay, because you can see the screen. That's why
right.
I can't see the screen. All right, go. Since you have yours, say yours, so I can think for a second.
The one that I would, and I don't know if I would want to change jobs with, or I would just like to be the understudy for Roger.
Yeah, that's because I'd like to be able to just show up, go wherever I want to.
Yeah, I just want to follow him around.
I want to cook chili a couple times a year. I want to make some
I don't
chicken.
want to cook it. I just want to eat it.
No, but I want to know that if people are eating my chili, they're coming back because of my chili.
That's true.
So, okay, we'll both share that we would trade with Roger.
Okay.
Who would we not want to trade with? Just football.
Yeah, affiliated with football. So it can be one of the outer-reaching branches, but
okay. That is a really, really good question.
Just for a day, I wouldn't want to trade with. Well, it depends on when it is. If it's during camp, I definitely don't want to trade with Andy or Dolph, just because they've got so much on their plate that they've got to not only get ready, but during practice you see all the equipment staffers running pads all over the place, jumping into drills whenever they have to, doing all kinds of stuff that I'm really don't want to do, for lack of a better term, especially in 112-degree heat on turf.
Yeah.
They're in the discussion. There's a lot of people that I know for a fact I couldn't do their job. Athletic trainers, one of them. Equipment, probably one of them. There's a lot of people that I know I could not do it. And gives you more respect for the people that do it.
I'm having a really tough time with this one.
Is it you're trying to narrow it down or you're trying to come up with one?
I think narrow it down.
Okay. I was about to say, I don't think you're allowed to say both on that.
No.
Start put a timer on you.
Chad.
You don't want to trade with Chad?
No.
You wouldn't want to be the head football coach for one day?
No.
See, he might be the one that I would want to, because for one day, you could reap the benefits, but not have to have the pressure because you know you're done after a day.
But you may not know that you're done unless you know you're done.
Okay, now we're getting into semantics.
That's we're peeling it back a little bit.
All right, that's your answer.
No,
we're going with it.
To know what encompasses now that we get a chance to work with Chad the way that we do, that's one where I would not want to trade with him.
Okay. Yeah.
Or whoever is in that position, not just because it's him, but whoever is in that position.
All right. I'll get on board with that. Okay. Would appreciate you tuning into this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Really appreciate Jared Benko stopping by to talk about the strategic plan that just got released on gseagles.com yesterday. Again, a 5-year kind of holistic view of what the vision of Georgia Southern athletics is over the next 5 years. As we talked about, a number of tangible things that you can measure that need to be achieved and be attained. But I really encourage you over the next couple of days, go to gseagles.com. You can find it online. I think there's actually a splash page when you go to gseagles.com. It pops up. It's a 32-page document, but I promise you it's not just reading for 32 pages of monotonous. It's stuff that when you see that's the vision of what Georgia Southern athletics is, it'll excite you even more for what's to come in Eagle Nation.
And the fact that so many people, so many walks, so many perspectives had their hands and their opinions put into this, it's going to answer just about every question that you have about where we are and where we hope to be by the time that 26 gets here.
Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we talked about a lot of changes in Inside Eagle Nation throughout the summer, and as we get closer and closer to kickoff on September the 4th, we will be, since camp starts on Friday, next Tuesday, we will start our position-by-position breakdown. We might have to combine a couple of position groups just for the sheer numbers. But we'll start diving into the X's and O's, and as Frank Solkowski says, the Jimmies and Joes.
The Jimmies and the Joes.
But we'll start diving into position group by position group coming up next Tuesday. Also going to be moving locations, going to be going to more of a permanent home. This is kind of our temporary home. That's a good country song, by the way.
Have I heard that one?
Probably.
Okay.
But be on the lookout for that. We will also be moving to Monday nights in the next couple of weeks. We will let you know when that happens because that is what Eagle Nation said they wanted. So it shall be.
Well, we try to break news at least one time a week.
You got more breaking news?
That's fairly just that.
Oh, I thought you had something that you were going to throw out of left field at me again.
We are a little bit more than halfway towards goal of me spending a night at Paulson Stadium. Appreciate everybody who has donated so far. You can go to my personal Twitter at GS Eagles Voice to find the link to donate to the Irk Russell Fund, or also find me on Facebook. I've got the link up. Remember, we raised $1,000 before August the 20th. I'll spend a night right here. If you raise up to $3,000, I'll spend up to 3 nights right here.
Literally right here?
Could be right here. I might roam. I might sleep on the 50. It's hard to say.
Depends on what the weather is.
Yeah, and knowing that it's rained every day here this summer, may have to go on the fly. But do appreciate everybody that has donated to the Irk Russell Fund so far. We're coming off a record-breaking season, and anything that we can do to help make this year even better, we're going to do so. I thought this was pretty creative. So for those that wanted more information, just find it on my Twitter or my Facebook page, and force me to spend a night here. If you don't like me, just donate and make me spend a night here.
But that'll wrap up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. We will talk to you next Tuesday when we start breaking position by position down for Georgia Southern football. For the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.